A few days ago, a Bharat netizen left a comment saying I'd pay a price for underestimating India. He said the EU and India had teamed up, and India was about to welcome major development opportunities. My feeling back then was that this brother might be sleepwalking, because I hadn't noticed any mainstream media reporting this news. That was until YouTube pushed a first post report to me, hosted by our familiar Paki Sharma. The news was about EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen leading some European Parliament members to visit India, warmly received by Modi. The delegation had a lot of members, after all, representing dozens of European countries. They were called Europe's elite by Paki Sharma, seemingly in charge of European power. The parliamentarians were arranged to experience India's hydrogen-powered electric buses, and they got a taste of New Delhi's urban landscape. Von der Leyen also met with Modi, looking ahead to 6G, AI, and other fields. At the same time, both sides agreed to push for the signing of an EU-India free trade agreement and more. Modi shook off the gloom from Trump's humiliation, regaining his confidence in front of the cameras. Yes, this is the big event that Bharat Empire netizens take pride in. So why didn't such a major event get attention, not just from big countries like China and the US, but even from European media with enough coverage? Von der Leyen expressed support for India, strengthening their shared values of freedom and democracy. But for the Bharat Empire, is this really a fate-changing opportunity? In fact, von der Leyen's title sounds impressive, EU Commission President, yet she doesn't have much real power. The EU Commission is the EU's executive body. Its biggest power is setting the agenda, discussing common codes of conduct within the EU framework. But the decision-making power for major EU matters rests with the leaders of big countries like France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. Especially France and Germany. They have direct influence over the EU. Von der Leyen got her position because Macron recommended her. Though Macron later had plenty of complaints about her, he wouldn't bother wrecking European unity over a figurehead job. When Macron visited China in 2023, von der Leyen tagged along as an EU representative. But Macron clearly didn't want her speaking for French interests. He didn't let von der Leyen ride his presidential plane, Republic One, instead making her travel to China on her own. This could be seen as a direct humiliation of von der Leyen, showing who's really in charge. The Chinese government gave Macron a grand welcome. Besides intensive talks with Chinese leaders in Beijing, Macron also visited Guangzhou, attending various official and civilian events, enjoying the treatment of a major nation's leader. Meanwhile, von der Leyen got a cold shoulder from China. They sent the environment minister to pick her up at the airport. Mind you, that's a technical department rarely involved in diplomacy. And von der Leyen's 3-day visit was entirely limited to Beijing, mainly discussing EU-China affairs with Chinese leaders and officials at various levels. China didn't arrange any sightseeing or tours for her, keeping an extremely aloof attitude. Because von der Leyen is a typical China hawk, the Chinese government knows her status well, unwilling to give her any chance to gain political capital. Plain and simple, the Chinese government couldn't be bothered with her. According to First Post's report, von der Leyen and Modi discussed industries like 6G, AI, and green energy, both sides aiming to deepen cooperation in these cutting-edge technologies. Honestly, I don't know what they're planning to collaborate on. If it's 5G, Europe has some say. After all, they've got industry giants like Nokia and Ericsson. But the top country in 5G tech is undoubtedly China. Huawei's the uncontested world leader, and China has big players like ZTE too. China's 5G penetration and ecosystem building far outstrip Europe's. If it's 6G, China and the US might have more clout. What leverage does India have to work with Europe? Does India have its own 2G tech? Jumping straight to 6G, you guys should have Modi pull out the Mahabharata. Tell von der Leyen the Bharat Empire invented 8G tech in ancient times, and 6G's outdated. As for AI, that's a key area where the US and China are competing. Frankly, Europe isn't even in the same league. Green energy's even less worth mentioning. China's lead is bigger there. And the Bharat Empire, It's basically a laughing monkey on the stage. What core tech does India have in these fields? The EU can at least act as the third economic pole outside China and the US. Would it ally with a beggar nation? And both sides signing a free trade agreement. That made me laugh even harder. Doesn't the Bharat Empire's media have basic common sense? Von der Leyen's commission can only carry out Europe's big decisions or set agendas. It has zero say over major matters. Whether Europe signs a free trade deal with India depends more on the attitudes of big countries like France and Germany. Without the support of those leaders, is von der Leyen going to take dozens of parliamentarians, form a new country, and sign a trade deal with India? Besides, is India's only issue a lack of free trade deals with Europe? India has no free trade agreements with any influential country or international organization. It's an economic island in the world. Why? Because the Indian government's credibility is terrible. India also has the highest tariff barriers globally and the worst attitude toward foreign companies. From the moment Modi played opportunistic games, trying to blackmail RCEP and failing, India was doomed to economic isolation, unable to join global supply chains, let alone secure a favorable spot in them. After lessons from SCO and BRICS, most countries worldwide know letting India into international organizations is planting a major hidden risk. India never understands coordinating actions in international groups or sacrificing a bit for the collective path. If India joins just to freeload and surrenders the moment there's any external pressure, would any international organization dare accept India again? Honestly, China now really hopes India would actively exit SCO and BRICS. Without India's disruptions, those groups would be much healthier. Take BRICS as an example. Its goal is to secure more say for global South countries, gaining better positions in the global system. That naturally means adopting policies like de-dollarization, reducing reliance on the dollar. This isn't for any one country's selfish gain. It's to boost trade control and cut risks for all member states. Or take southern countries acting together in some international bodies, countering G7 and other Western groups. That's also for the members' shared interests. These moves will definitely face pressure from the US and Western nations. If the Americans say no and everyone caves like India, does BRICS still need to exist? If all members negotiate one-on-one with the US per Trump's demands, they'd surely get fleeced by the US. After all, aside from China, few countries globally can face the US alone. Truth be told, Modi's been quieter lately after Trump slapped him in the face. I'd originally hoped he'd wake up from the shame, brag less, do more real work, seriously list out India's severe problems, and tackle them one by one. Get India on the right track for development, build enough strength to avoid more humiliation. But after seeing his speech following the von der Leyen meeting, I think I was over-optimistic. There's a Chinese saying, a dog can't stop eating shit. I reckon Modi won't kick his bragging habit in this lifetime. I'd like to say to Bharat netizens, there are no eternal friends between nations, only eternal interests. Ukraine's misery tells the world that shared values are worthless in the face of real interests. If a country wants global respect, the best way isn't relying on a strong ally. It's becoming strong itself. Hope you stop flaunting good ties with the US, Europe, or Russia in the future. Their flattery is just to sell you more weapons. Countries willing to buy at your high prices are rare these days. Von der Leyen can't make big decisions for the EU, nor can she bring glory to India. She's just a figurehead leader, more honorary than anything. She's been to Beijing, and this India visit must have left a deep impression on her. The tech the Bharat Empire showed off, along with India's urban landscape and economic development level compared to China's vast gap, must have shocked her deeply.